Austerity dominates the news in France. The country's Senate is preparing for a controversial vote on pension reform. President Nicolas Sarkozy insists the law will pass and his government will defy industrial action that's crippling the transport system. Meanwhile, unrest is increasing on the streets where some protests have turned violent. Chilcote reports from Paris.
Another day, another protest in Paris. This one in Nanterre, the neighborhood where the unrest of 1968 unfolded. Fast forward 4 decades, and the French appear to be at it again. Only those taking to the streets against raising the age of retirement from 60 to 62 are not even close to getting their pensions. They're in high school. It's just the most recent demonstration of anger here in the French capital. The question is, will it change anything? The government says no. One thing is clear, the wave of strikes and protests is taking a toll. All 12 of France's fuel refineries have been hit by strikes since last week, forcing 15% of the nation's petrol stations to close. Supply of fuel to airports has also been affected. To play it safe, France's aviation authority has asked airports to halve the number of flights they allow in and out. Ports have also been hit. Dozens of ships remain stranded off the coast of Marseille. And inside France's second largest city, the situation, well, stinks. That's because the trash has been piling up in Marseille. Garbage collectors have been on strike for the last week. Despite 4 nationwide protests since the beginning of September, full 2/3 of the French people are in favor of even more radical demonstrations. According to recent polls, 1/3 of the French think the government will pass its pension reform unchanged. French President Sarkozy's government says the strikes will not deter them.
This reform is indispensable. If we don't do anything, or if the government decides to change the proposal, the pension system will hit a wall. It's a question of logic. We live longer, so we must work longer, like the rest of Europe.
After police arrested around 200 students in Paris, another group gathers at a police station to demand their release. Just around the corner, a group of retirees quietly enjoy a game of pétanque. In Paris, the question is who, government or protesters, will budge.
Well, Ryan joins us live now from Paris. And Ryan, these protests are growing more extreme, aren't they? But doesn't the retirement age in France compare rather favourably to other European countries?
Certainly from the perspective of workers, it compares favorably. It is 65 in Germany, and it is higher in nearly every single European country, whether that's Spain, Italy, or the UK. So the government's argument is that the retirement age here needs to rise, in particular considering that up until 1983 in this very country it was 65 when it was rolled back to 60. So they say 62 really, it's just a compromise. 65 is what we should be aiming for, and actually where it will have to be raised to in about 10 years' time. This is just a temporary measure.
And Ryan, just tell us a little bit more about who is actually taking part in these protests. A lot of young people participating, right?
Yeah, that's perhaps one of the most remarkable things about the demonstrations over the last week, the number of young people out on the streets. When you ask them why they're there, it's quite interesting to hear their answer. Their argument is the longer people have to work in this country, the longer they remain in the workforce and the less jobs that are available to them. Doesn't sound like a big deal. Well, keep in mind that unemployment in France is around 10%. Youth unemployment is nearly double that, particularly here in Paris in the Parisian suburbs. So they're very concerned about these older people having to work longer so that they and them not being able to get those jobs.
Ryan, thanks very much. Ryan Chilcote there for us in Paris.